The NFL draft is coming up later this month, so we're moving into our NFL draft coverage. We're going to start with a question with the quarterbacks. After Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson are off the board, who is next and when does that happen?
It's tough because whoever gets picked, whenever it happens, I mean, it's gonna be like fourth round. I can't remember a draft where genuinely we might only have one quarterback go in the first round. If Simpson goes, it'll be late first round, but I think we can both agree he's definitely a second round pick. In terms of the third guy, uh, where I'm standing with this is, would you rather take a guy with a ton of experience and see if he can develop from there, or do you want to take a guy who is an Anthony Richardson type, does not have a good arm really all that much, but is a great athlete, and try to see what you can salvage from there. So for me, it's either Carson Beck or Taylor Green out of Arkansas, who definitely had one of the best combines of all time. Um, Nussmeyer, I guess there's a conversation we had there, but I feel like it's either between Beck and Green.
That's an interesting proposition. I could definitely see a team just taking a flyer and getting a project, and maybe that guy never really sees the field in any meaningful capacity, but they are just going to take a shot and they don't mind to do it. Obviously, when we're talking about this, we're assuming Fernando Mendoza is he's definitely going one, but we're also assuming the next guy off the board is Ty Simpson, maybe late first. It's definitely, I think we are both in agreement sometime in the second, and then there's no way he goes past the third. So I think the next QB that comes off the board, truthfully, unless there's somebody who does take a shot on a project like Taylor Green, I think the next guy is coming off in the fourth round because I don't see any of the guys available that is enticing enough for a team to take a third, especially when there could be a lot of talent still left on the board. Garrett Nussmeyer, he feels like he could be a classic backup QB, but this last year at LSU was really, really bad, and I think a lot of teams might push back on that. Carson Beck, he feels like an NFL quarterback. He's played so much football in college, but he still has those terrible throws
Yeah.
in college that turn into terrible interceptions. And that feels like that definitely translates to the NFL, right? If you have that. But he would probably be my pick. Legitimately, I think he would be my pick. He's QB3 for a lot of guys in the mock draft space and QB4 for some of the other ones. So I think it makes sense as far as his placing there. But I would say like maybe early fourth would be where he goes. I like him over Drew Aller. That's for sure.
And with Drew Aller, it is tough because I feel like if he finished out the year, we might have seen him solidify himself as the third quarterback, but obviously things happen, and what we saw was not great that whole season for them.
I mean, it just turned into a dumpster fire. What are you going to do? I mean,
Sure.
Cade Klubnik's probably in the same realm too.
Yeah, Cade Klubnik was a guy I feel like I remember this time last year. So I was talking about Cade Klubnik winning the Heisman, him and Nussmeyer in the race, and it really is crazy when you think of this quarterback class that we all dreamed up is genuinely looking to be one of the worst ones we've had in at least of this decade so far.
I mean, I do remember. I remember you when we started this
Yeah,
off, talking about some of these drafts, uh, where it was like, man, when's the last time we saw one QB go in the first or whatever? We've had some pretty rough years. It feels like over the last 6 years or so,
yeah,
we've had a couple that are pretty poor. Last year, I mean, if the Giants weren't high on Jackson Dart, and I'm guessing there were other teams because they traded up to get him. If I mean, just a big if, but if some teams weren't, high on him, it would have been what Jalen Milroe was the next QB to come off the board or whatever. I know Shadur Sanders fell and everything like that, and there were
oh
and
yeah,
maybe there were a couple guys in the middle
yeah.
of them, but like that could have been a pretty piss poor draft outside of Cam Ward as far as the quarterbacks were concerned. Tyler Shuck obviously is the other guy that I'm missing there. He was taken, I believe, in the second round. So you look at the QBs in the last couple of years or last handful of years, and the drafts are kind of all over the place. Sometimes you definitely know you're getting your franchise guys, or you're willing to take a swing. Other times it's less so. Are we glossing over Garrett Nussmeyer too much here?
I mean, maybe. I mean, Nussmeyer definitely, I feel like, out of the field outside of Simpson and Mendoza, in terms of what star power, I guess like his name does pop out. next to Carson Beck, but that's just because he's been in college for so long. But Nussmeier definitely showed some things at LSU. I don't want to take away, one bad season, but when you're in college, one bad season is kind of make or break. Yeah, SEC quarterback though, I definitely obviously see him getting drafted, but the third guy after Simpson, I'm not so sure because the quarterback class is such a toss up. And this is my definitive answer. I'm gonna say Taylor Green surprises a lot of people and goes third quarterback off the board. I know
I'm
it's
not against that.
yeah. I
Well,
think
I would be against that if I was a GM, but I'm not against that pick. I think you might be accurate.
yeah.
Let me throw out a couple of names here before we move on. Joey Aguilar.
I actually like Aguilar a lot, but he kind of lost a lot of momentum towards the end of the season at Tennessee. So I don't see it. No.
I think there was a point there where he could have really gone up draft boards. I think he was a guy who needed another year, just didn't have it. Luke Altmaier from Illinois. Throwing some.
I don't think I can trust a quarterback out of Illinois.
Yeah, he had his moments, and then they played some stiffer competition, and it was maybe less so. Sawyer Robertson out of Baylor. He threw for a lot of yards last year.
Yeah, Sawyer Robertson actually, obviously watched a lot of Baylor games last season, Big 12. Well, I'm not a Baylor fan. I'm just, I like my conference. I do actually like Sawyer Robertson a lot as a late round guy. I think he'll make a team wherever he goes. But not.
I like it. I like him as a guy who can be on a roster, but outside of that, maybe not that high in the draft. All right, what about Diego Pavia?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe actually. I mean, I don't like Diego Pavia as a person. Dude sucks, and I think character goes a long way with quarterbacks and leaders of a franchise. But he was in the Heisman voting. That kind of counts for something, I guess. And he completely changed the culture. So maybe even just as a locker room guy, Actually, no, he would be an
That's a
awful.
nice little spin on it. I never thought of it like that, to be honest. I was gonna say maybe if Shadur Sanders, his own, character issues, like messed with his draft stock, I'd imagine it would for Diego Pavia, especially if teams view him more of as a backup anyway. I don't think he'll go third though, but he's an interesting name. He will get drafted, I think.